This broadcast is brought to you by the British Israel Church of God. The Watchman Program. Evangelist and commentator Peter Salemi, bringing you the truth about today's world news in the light of Bible prophecy.
And greetings, friends. The Cold War, NATO, the Warsaw Pact, the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's current alliance with China in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Are all these events prophesied in the pages of your Bible? Now, Russia has played a key role in major events that took place, especially in the 20th century, at the height of the Soviet Union, during the time of the Cold War, when Russia and the United States were at the brink of total nuclear war. Now, you figure with these major events taking place in the 20th century, you'd figure that they are mentioned in biblical prophecy. Are they mentioned in biblical prophecy? Oh, yes. The key is to understanding where Russia is identified in the pages of the Bible. And this is what we're going to go through with you today on today's broadcast. Where is Russia identified in the pages of the Bible? Now, there's been a lot of speculation about where Russia is in biblical prophecy. Many people believe that Russia is Gog of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. The problem is you don't find Gog or Magog or Meshech or Tubal in any of the tribal names of the Russians. And there's also a theory that Russia is Tiraz in the Bible. And of course, we debunk that theory in our booklet that I want to offer you today, Russia in Bible Prophecy. Where are the Russians identified in the pages of the Bible? And when you understand where Russia is in Bible prophecy, then you can understand that all these major events that took place, especially in the 20th century, of the Cold War, of NATO, the Warsaw Pact, the collapse of the Soviet Union, you can understand that all these major events that took place were prophesied in the pages of your Bible. I urge you to download that booklet, Russia in Prophecy, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
Well, life's been pretty good. Summer home, yacht, vacation when I wanted. Some little kid sure spent a lot of time with that. Too bad they never last. Yeah, a lot of things are like that. Kids are grown now, and Sandy and I aren't getting any younger. Is this all there is?
You can know the answer to this age-old question. What is the purpose of human life? Download your free copy at britishisrael.ca or call or text for a free hard copy at 905-447-4415 or 416-898-7407.
So where is Russia identified in the pages of the Bible? You know, I believe this is one of the best kept secrets of prophecy, next to the identity of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. And when you understand where Russia is, then you can understand major prophecies in the Bible, and they become very, very clear. And when you understand where Russia is in Bible prophecy, then you can understand what is going on right now in this end time. Now, Russia is basically the Eastern Slavic people. And they come from a people called the Kiev Rus. Now, these Kiev Rus people ruled in southern Russia in the 9th century AD. Now, many historians have noted that these Kiev Rus people actually come from the Mitanni Empire. As one historian, Edwin Yamauchi, writes, he says, the Mitanni Kuri became the Eastern Slavic Russians. The Kievans, who trace their ancestry to the Koriv per the Russian primary chronicle. So the Kiev Rus people, where the Eastern Slavs come from, and the Eastern Slavs are the Russians today, from southern Russia, the Eastern Slav people moved to what is modern-day Russia today. These Kiev Rus people came from the Mitanni Empire. Now, this Mitanni Empire ruled in Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia between 1500 and 1300 BC. You can read that in the Holman's Bible Dictionary. They ruled in the Middle East, then eventually migrated up into southern Russia and became the Kiev Rus people. Now, what's interesting about this word Rus, the word Rus in the Mitanni Empire, the Mitanni Empire was called the land of the Rashu, and it meant the land of the blondes. Now, this word Rashu is where we get the word Rus from, or Russians. And in the Eastern Slavic language, Rus means blondes. Can we find these Mitanni people in biblical history? Well, when we look at the book of Genesis, we find that there is Midian and Ishmael. And Midian and Ishmael formed a tribal league, a huge alliance. And we find in biblical history that these two groups dwelt in the very lands of the Mitanni. And in his book, The Hittites by Crowley, he writes in his footnote that in Genesis the 37th chapter, when the Midianites bought Joseph, it says that the original rendering was the Mitanni. But then it says the name was altered to the more familiar, so people can understand who the Mitanni are. Now, in another source, by KurdistanObserver.com, it says this, that the first king of the Mitanni is born from Kitra. And Kitra sounds like Keturah, the wife of Abraham, who was the mother of Midian. We find that the Midianites and the Ishmaelites in biblical history and in secular history are the Mitanni people. And we see in Genesis the 25th chapter. In Genesis 25, verse 6, we see that Abraham ordered his sons to dwell in the east. Now, east of Palestine, of course, is northwestern Arabia. And here we find in Genesis the 25th chapter, verse 18, it says, and they, talking of Ishmael, dwelt from Havilah unto Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest towards Assyria, which is northwestern Arabia. Not down in Mecca or Medina or anywhere, but northwestern Arabia in the king, and that is the kingdom of the Mitanni, Midian. And one of the major tribes of Midian was the Hur. And the Hurrians became the Kiev Rus. The Hurrians, the Kurians, the Kiev Rus. So the Mitanni kingdom consisted of Midian and Ishmael, and they ruled 1500 BC to 1300 BC. And then they migrated up into southern Russia and became the Kiev Rus people. And these Eastern Slavs that came from the Kiev Rus people, they migrated up into Russia. And these Russian peoples, when you look at the blessings that they have received, these Russian peoples are the peoples of Ishmael. And when we understand that Russia is Ishmael, then we can understand these major prophecies about Russia. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
The mighty Roman Empire had everything. Plenty of leisure time. Their own new morality. Enormous military might. The religion of their choice. Political freedom. What went wrong? Read The Modern Romans, a 93-page lesson of history ignored. The Modern Romans asks, can we afford the grandeur of Rome?
Many of you are probably shocked that Russia is Ishmael. I know that the popular belief is that the Arabs are Ishmael, but that belief is not based on fact. That belief is based on tradition and myth, as this one source says from the Encyclopedia of Religion. It says here that this belief that the Arabs are Ishmael is entirely without foundation. And it seems to have originated in the tradition invented by Arab vanity that they, as well as the Jews, are of the seed of Abraham, a vanity which, besides disfiguring and falsifying the whole history of the patriarch and his son Ishmael, has transferred the scene of it from Palestine to Mecca. Dr. Robert Morey, in his book Islamic Invasion, writes, most standard reference works on Islam reject the Arab claim to Abrahamic descent. The Encyclopedia of Islam traces the Arabs to non-Abrahamic origins. Even the Dictionary of Islam questions the whole idea that the Arabs are descendants of Ishmael. And Warwick writes in his book, Why I'm Not a Muslim, he says, as for the historian, the Arabs are no more descendants of Abraham than the French are of Francus, son of Hector. And even Dr. Robert Morey says again that nowhere in the Quran does it state that Ishmael is the progenitor of the Arab race. Since it's not taught in the Quran, it cannot be a true Islamic belief. It is based on myth and tradition, and we find in the Bible that the Arabs are actually descendant of Joshdan, that you find in Genesis the 10th chapter. Genesis the 10th chapter, verses 26 through 30. It talks about Joshdan, and it talks about Ophir and Havilah, and it says, and their dwelling was Mesha. That's the ancient name of Mecca. This is who the Arabs are. The Arabs are the people of Joshdan and not Ishmael. The descendants of the people of Ishmael are the Russian people today, and they have fulfilled the prophecies of Ishmael to the letter. Notice what it says here in Genesis the 17th chapter, verse 20. It says here, as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes. We have the 12 tribes of Israel. Here we have the 12 princes of Ishmael. The 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. And of course, Russia is a huge and powerful nation. Notice what it says in Genesis the 16th chapter, verse 12 about Ishmael. It says, and he, that's Ishmael, will be a wild man. Now, other translations have it a wild ass of a man. The Farrar Fenton has it a free man. And then it says, his hand will be against every man, and every man will be against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Now, the Moffat translation has it, he will defy all his brethren. Now, to defy your brethren means, according to the dictionary, to provoke, openly and boldly, to resist. And to be a wild ass of a man, this is the characteristic of the nation of Ishmael. It means they are to be independent. And it says that they are to be free. Now it's interesting. Before the communist takeover of Russia, they were pretty much Orthodox Christian. But then the communists took over and they broke free from Christianity. And they became the greatest atheistic empire the world has ever seen. And they maintained their independence from the West. Now notice, he defies all his brethren. What a perfect description of the Cold War, of openly provoking, boldly openly provoking and resisting his brethren to the West. Now it's interesting that the secondary meaning of dwelling in the presence of your brethren also means that he will dwell to the east of his brethren. And Russia's in the east, and of course Britain and America are in the west. So he's defying all of his brethren, resisting, provoking. What a perfect description of the Cold War, of capitalism versus communism, of NATO versus the Warsaw Pact, of the Marshall Plan. You know, the United States came up with the Marshall Plan. The Russians said, no, we have our own plan for Eastern Europe, and we have our own economic plan for Eastern Europe. And so they maintain their independence from the West. It is a perfect description of what happened in the 20th century with the Cold War between Britain and the United States and Russia. The Cold War was prophesied in the pages of your Bible. And also the fall of the Soviet Union was also prophesied in the pages of the Bible. In Isaiah, the 21st chapter, here talking about Kedar. In Isaiah, the 21st chapter, verse 16, it says, for thus says the Eternal, it says, within a year, according to the years of a hireling, and all the glory of Kedar shall fail. And of course, within the year of the revolution of 1989, within that year of the fall of the Iron Curtain and so on, that caused the chain reaction that caused the fall of the Soviet Empire. Within that year, between February and December of 1989, that whole revolution that took place, that caused the Soviet Empire to fall. So the fall of the Soviet Empire was prophesied in the pages of the Bible. Kedar is one of the major tribes of Ishmael. Now, what is the future of Russia? Well, before I get on with that, I want to offer you this free booklet, Russia in Bible Prophecy, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
Guilty.
Download your free booklet, Is There Really a Hellfire? At britishisrael.ca, or call or text for a free hard copy at 905-447-4415 or 416-898-7407.
Russia is part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Many people call it the NATO of the East, which is, of course, led by China. And we have been saying for years now that China is going to attack the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and they are going to be attacking from the north. And of course, we find this prophecy in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, of Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and that is China. Read our booklet, China in Prophecy, for the details on that. Now, in Jeremiah, the 49th chapter, it's speaking of the same war. And here it has a separate prophecy for Ishmael, and Ishmael is going to be involved in this war, and it's going to be, of course, on China's side. Notice what it says here in Jeremiah 49:28. Here it's talking about Kedar, concerning Kedar, the kingdoms of Hazor. Kedar is one of the major tribes of Ishmael. Now notice what it says in verse 31. It says, "Arise, get you up," talking to Ishmael, "unto the wealthy nation that dwelleth without care, says the Eternal, neither gates nor bars, which dwell alone." We find the same passage in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, verse 11, of people dwelling safely, dwelling without walls, having neither bars nor gates. That's verse 11 of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. Now notice what it says here in verse 32. It says, "And their camels." Now, camels were a vehicle for trade in ancient times. Back then, they were called the ships of the desert. So it says, their camels, their vehicles for trade. This is how we transport goods all over the world. Well, here we see Ishmael going up and taking these away. It shall be a booty, and the multitude of their cattle a spoil. We read this again back in Ezekiel 38:12. Talking here about China. It says to take a spoil, to take a prey, and it says to go up against the people that are gathered out of many nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. And then it says in verse 13, "Hast thou come to take a spoil, to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil?" So here we see China taking away the spoil, and God says to Ishmael, "Get you up and take this same spoil away as well." And then it says, "And I will scatter in all the winds them that are in the utmost corners," talking about Israel, "and I will bring their calamity from all sides thereof, says the Eternal," talking about Israel's calamity, the great tribulation. So Ishmael, Russia, is going to be in this same alliance with Gog, as it says here, "and many people with you," verse 6 of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. So that involves Ishmael as well. Ishmael is going to be in this alliance, and they are going to attack North America from the north. Now, as I said over and over again, our Arctic is pretty much undefended. Yet Russia has got about 100 icebreakers up there. China wants to establish military bases up in the Arctic, and Russia and China are trying to establish a Silk Road in the Arctic. And we pretty much have our Arctic undefended. And since Russia and China are in an alliance together, they are going to come up through the Arctic, which Russia controls already, and China wants a part of it as well. They're going to come up through the Arctic and attack North America from the north and come down and attack North America, Australia, New Zealand from the north and take away all the great spoil, all the riches that we have. They're going to take it all away and scatter Israel into all the winds, and they are going to be in slavery and captivity, as it says in Ezekiel, the 39th chapter, verse 25 through 29. So get that free booklet, Russia in Prophecy, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. This is Peter Salemi saying goodbye, friends, and I'll see you here next time on the Watchman program.